Good morning and a warm welcome to each of you. It's lovely to be gathered together in this way, to see each other's faces and be practicing this way of Dhamma, be taking care of our lives in this way. It's really lovely. So this is the Sunday Sounds of Dhamma program. And that means we'll have a brief meditation, guided meditation, maybe 10 or 15 minutes or so. And then I'll offer a Dhamma talk. And we'll have some time for reflections or questions at the end. And then the dedication of merits. And before that, I just want to say there are many, many activities going on, virtual and in-person activities here at Dassanaya. In particular, next weekend, I will be going down to Fredericksburg, Virginia, to lead a day-long on the topic of joy in practice, joy in meditation. And movie night is coming up. There will be popcorn. And yeah, it's also time right now to register for the June in-person retreat at Seven Oaks. That's an 8-day or 12-day option. And for the 9-month course, which is really an opportunity to make lifelong Dharma friends. So I hope you'll all look into that on the website. And also Stephen Steiner, who is one of the teachers in training here, is away hiking. So also keep an eye on the website for some things that are paused. Some of the programs are paused at the moment. All right, so with that, I think we will go ahead and begin the meditation. And today I just want to do a little bit of a mindfulness of breathing. So if you haven't already muted your mic, folks online, please do so. And we're going to practice a form of mindfulness of breathing that the Buddha himself said that he practiced even after his awakening. So we'll give it a try. But as always, starting first with the body. Just a little bit of movement. Releasing any sort of tension or any habitual leaning toward the computer, and allowing the body to find an upright and balanced posture. Sensing the weight of the body on your seat. Finding that sense of alignment up through the neck and the head. And perhaps the shoulders can soften and widen. And finding the sensations of the breath, breathing the body. Gently resting the attention on those sensations, whether that's in the nose, the throat, the chest, the diaphragm, or the echo of the breath in the lower abdomen. Any place is fine. Aware of in-breath, aware of out-breath, and perhaps also aware of the pauses between the breaths. No need to change anything at all, just receiving. Allowing the mind to ride along the length of the breath. And widening the attention to the whole body at once. The whole body from head to toe. Still aware of the breath. In and out. So that brings us to the end of the meditation for this morning's practice. And if you have any reflections or questions about that, we can talk about that after the Dhamma talk. And for now, we're going to shift to that part of the program. So I'm going to share a screen, and I always begin my talks with homage to the Buddha and to what we call the triple gem. So this text that you see on your screen right now is the homage to the Buddha, and that first line that's repeated 3 times. It says homage to, or honor to, or reverence to the Bhagavato, the Blessed One. The Arahato means the fully awakened one who has arrived at the 4th and final stage of enlightenment. And Samma Sambuddhassa means perfectly well awake one. And then we have Buddhang, not that last line. Buddhang, again, the historical person. I'm going to speak a little bit about him today. But also the you could say the nature of awakening, or the capacity or the quality of awakening in whatever form we find it. And then Dhamma, the teachings and the truths that those teachings are pointing to. And Sangha. Sangha is originally the awakened, only the awakened people, lay folks and ordained folks. Then it was expanded to be all ordained folks. And now these days, we mean it in the sort of broadest sense of the way that Sangha was discussed in early Buddhism, which is the what we call the fourfold Sangha, the lay women and lay men, ordained women and ordained men. And given the sort of variety of ways that we talk about gender nowadays, I'd say the multifold Sangha, it's all included in there. So reverence to them as well, honor to them, to us. So we'll go ahead and chant it together if you like, and if not, you can just let it wash over you. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutang dhammang sanghang namasami. So tomorrow is the full moon of the 5th month of the year. The full moon of the month of May. And that means that it is the biggest holiday of the entire Buddhist calendar. It's a day called Wesak. V as in victory, V-E-S-A-K, Wesak. And Wesak is a day that is celebrating the birth, the enlightenment, and the death of the historical person who we call the Buddha. Buddha is his title. It means one who is awake. It's not his name. That's what we call him, the one who is awake. And interestingly, he didn't refer to himself as Buddha. He referred to himself as Tathagata. This, it's sort of like the one or the suchness that comes in this way, or the suchness that goes in that way. That's what Tathagata means. So there is so much that could be said about the Buddha. The stories of his life are incomplete, but we do know some of it from the texts that we call the Tripitaka. The Tipitaka or Tripitaka, depending on if you're talking in Pali or in Sanskrit. But those texts are originally in Pali. And in the rules or the collection of the guidelines for the monastic order for the folks who are ordained, there are some of the stories of his life. And in what we call the suttas, which is typically translated as discourses, we also see the way that he told some of the story of his life in order to benefit folks who were on the path so they could understand how he woke up. And the third basket is the Abhidhamma. That came later. That's kind of an analysis of the teachings. And maybe one day I'll give a talk about that, but that's not our topic today. So the Buddha, people sometimes ask if Buddhism is a religion, or if Buddhism is a philosophy, or if Buddhism is a lifestyle. Huh? And I'd say it could be any of those things for you. There isn't a single Buddhism, for one, right? There are many, many, dozens and dozens of different Buddhist traditions. And but if you're looking for miracles and you're looking for salvation and you're looking for an explanation of how you are part of something infinite and greater than you, then you can certainly find that in Buddhism as a religion. If you're looking for a philosophy, a sort of explanation of the meaning of the human life, you can certainly find that within Buddhism. If you're looking for a lifestyle or a practice, some way of engaging with your mind and body in a way that's more healthy and more wholesome, then Buddhism will also give you that. And I don't think that the Buddha himself historically really thought about it in categories like that. The Buddha says very clearly that he set out to solve the problem of death and the problem of suffering. Or we could say, not just suffering, because the word is dukkha. And the word dukkha means something like unsatisfactoriness, or that kind of deep down gnawing sense that something is wrong. And he finds his way to resolving that problem. And that's what we mean by enlightenment. But the way that he goes around about resolving that problem, or you could say the approach is one of just starting to study what's actually here, what's actually going on. In fact, one of the discourses that I want to share with you today is this story about Venerable Ananda. Venerable Ananda was the Buddha's attendant for the last 25 years of his teaching period. He taught for something like about 45 years or so after his awakening and until his death. And there's a story in which Venerable Ananda, his assistant, is recounting all of the miracles and the things that led up to the Bodhisattva's birth. So he referred to himself as a Bodhisattva before he was awakened, meaning he was an awakening being. He was a being on the way to awakening. And so Venerable Ananda is saying, telling some of these stories. His mother, Mahamaya, had a dream about a white elephant. And then she finds out that she has conceived a child and she is pregnant. And he's born in a way that is said to be emerging from her side. And various other miracles that happened after he was born. But then Ananda, this is the interesting part. Now, because whether or not you believe in miracles or are looking for miracles, to me, the interesting part is at the end of this discourse where Venerable Ananda checks in with the Buddha and he says, okay, now, all of these things I heard and learned from the Buddha's own lips. And I remember them as a wonderful and marvelous qualities of the Buddha. And the Buddha says, well, that being so, remember also this. Remember the marvelous and wonderful quality of an awakened one. That awakened one knows feelings that are pleasant or unpleasant or neutral as they arise. They know thoughts as they are present, as they are subside. They know perceptions as they arise, as they are present, as they subside, and so on. So the Buddha is saying, he's making a statement about his lived understanding of his mind, right? And it doesn't sound all that complicated. You know when something arises, you know when something is present, you know when something goes away. But think about that for a moment. Are you actually observing every moment of every thought, of every perception, of every feeling and sensation as it arises, as it's present, as it passes away? Nope. No, generally not. Generally, we are only catching, we're only observing a fraction of that activity. Even just sitting still and watching the breath, right? Did you see? Even, let's say, 4 breaths from the moment of the pause, the arising, the full length of the breath, the end of that breath, the next pause. Maybe. It's certainly possible. But the fact that the Buddha names that as one of the marvelous attributes is an indicator to him of the state of development of a mind that could do such a thing. Right? So it's by this means that we come to know, that we come to wake up to the truths of our lives. It's by this means. So, usually we talk about there being 3 major aspects to Buddhism: Sila, Samadhi, Panya, ethics. Samadhi means, kind of in a general sense, meditation. And Panya is wisdom. Yeah. And you could understand those as both the means and the outcome. So in order to develop that mind that's capable of really knowing a thought or a perception, all thoughts, all perceptions, with that kind of clarity, we begin with living an ethical life, setting aside killing, setting aside taking what is not given, setting aside sexual misconduct, setting aside false and harmful speech. In part because that will actually make your life a whole lot more pleasant. I would suggest fewer difficult consequences. But also because that kind of life, that kind of upright life, tends to allow the mind to relax, right? You can sleep better at night. That's how we usually refer to it. You can sleep better at night. And then there is samadhi. Samadhi, the many, many different ways of observing mind and body, of clarifying the mind and body, of settling the mind and body, so that we can slow down enough to be willing to see. You know, I think that's one of the great ironies of contemporary life, that there's a sense of if we calm down even slightly from our overstimulation, then something's wrong. Then we need more. But the fact is that as we observe when we meditate, there is a steady stream of sensation that's happening, coming in the sense doors all the time. And if we're going to observe the subtleties of that, then we might have to stop stirring the pots quite so much. And the Buddha wisely gave all sorts of different ways of meditating. That's a very important aspect as well. And people's minds do have different tendencies and different preferences, and you can work with that. You can find a meditation that will help you work with what your particular tendencies are. And then finally, wisdom, right? Wisdom, the knowing and seeing things as they truly are. This kind of profound understanding of what's happening. And this is where we can see the Buddha describe the way in which we are completely integral to the boundless, the infinite. So there's two ways that usually the early Buddhism talks about this kind of understanding. One is interdependence, right? So these bodies and minds are made up in such a way that they're always interacting with the world. They're interacting with our inner world, they're interacting with our outer world. And that is actually, when closely observed, you start to see that the boundary of what you think is here is much more porous, much less clear, much less firm. That this whole state of mind and body interacting with the world is really very dynamic. And that means that we're also connected to all those things that we're interacting with, and all the things that those things are interacting with, and all the things that those things are interacting with. Like that, right? Because all things are also interconnected in that way. So it's not that there's one thing. That's a mistake, I believe, when people talk about it that way. The Zen phrase for this is not one, not two. Not one, not two, right? There are many different things, many different phenomena, and none of those phenomena is completely independent. They're all related. And we are too. We are that thing. We are part of that same fabric. It's a beautiful teaching in a way, because it means that you're never alone. Mm. And the other way that the early Buddhist teachings talk about this this ultimate vastness, or this ultimate integration into the all things, is with the Brahma viharas, this what we call the heavenly abidings, or the four very uplifted, joyful meditations on loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And the states are described as boundless, limitless. Not big, not vast, but actually boundless. That this mind is, by its nature, encompassing the limitless. So the Buddha discovers all of these things. The Buddha has his moment of awakening, and he talks about that night. He talks about being challenged by Mara. So who's Mara? Mara is this being, sometimes called the devil, but I think that's actually overstating the case. Mara is more like a trickster, and somebody who wants people to be entangled, in a sense. That's his job. So he goes around interrupting people's meditations. That's how he's described in the suttas. It's kind of a funny thing. And you might understand Mara to be your inner shadow, your inner disruptive trickster. Or you might understand Mara to be an actual being. That's how the Buddha spoke about him anyway. He actually spoke about Mara as being kind of like a job, like somebody would be Mara for a while, and then that person would die and somebody else would be Mara for a while, kind of like that. But in any event, however you understand Mara, Mara approaches the Buddha as he's nearing awakening and demands to know, why is he worthy? Why is he worthy of waking up? Mm. And the Buddha does what we call Bhumi Parsha Mudra. He touches the earth. He puts his hand down, his right hand down, and he touches the earth. And he says, the earth is his witness. The earth is his witness. So one way to understand that is he had been practicing by himself for some amount of time, right? The 5 companions that he had been practicing with had left him at one point, thinking that he was kind of slacking off. And so he was practicing by himself. So only the earth could actually know that he had done all of the practice that was going to lead up to this complete unfolding. But another way to understand it, and the way that I really relate to, is that the Buddha is saying just to be a being of this earth is enough. That is worthy enough. And indeed, he goes on to teach all sorts of people about the way, right? He goes on to teach these companions who had left him. That's a beautiful moment. Kondanya becomes Anya Kondanya. Kondanya becomes one who understands. It's the first transmission of the teaching. And the moment when the teaching becomes the legacy of humanity, it doesn't just belong to him anymore, to the Buddha anymore. It becomes our legacy. And then he goes on and he teaches all sorts of people. He teaches prostitutes, and he teaches warriors, and he teaches magicians, and he teaches slaves, and he teaches nobles, and he teaches Brahmins, who are the highest caste, folks who are responsible for a different kind of spirituality. And he teaches householders, merchants, farmers, serial killers. Angulimala was a serial killer. The Buddha demonstrated exactly that truth time and time again, that it is mankind's, humankind's legacy, the Dhamma. In fact, when he's getting ready to die and people are saying, oh, you know, it's going to be terrible and we won't have our teacher anymore and all will be lost. And he says, no, no, no. The Dhamma and the discipline that I taught you, that is your teacher. That is your teacher. That the Dhamma wasn't something that was his belonging. It was rather a discovery. It was a beautiful discovery. So nearing the end of his life, the Buddha, this is all told in Digha Nikaya 16, in Long Discourse number 16. There's a whole description of the last months of the Buddha's life. And as he's getting very near to the end, he lies down between 2 trees and he says his last words, the Buddha's last words. He says, Vaya Dhamma Sankara Appamadena Sampadata. So something like, all constructed things are leaving, all constructed things are falling apart. And what are constructed things? Everything we know except for Nibbana. When you experience nirvana, you know that that is the unconditioned or the unconstructed. But everything else Literally everything else in your experience is a constructed thing. So all constructed things are falling apart. They are leaving. They are going away. It's a very poignant thing for him to say. He too is a constructed thing that's going away in that moment. Mm. And that second line, Apamadena sampadita. Apamadena means with care, or it actually means, if we translate it quite literally, it means without carelessness. So it's sometimes translated as diligence, strive on with diligence. I'm not particularly fond of that translation, as you can tell by the way I said it. Care. And what is this sampadita? Sampadita is a kind of ripening or a kind of maturing. When the rice is done, when the rice is fully cooked, it's sampadita. Mm. So that last phrase is something like fulfill the way, or completely mature the way. How? With care. With care. Beautiful. And so many things that it's not. Not believe this, not you have to be like me, not give up all hope. No, just know. Just know. All things are leaving us. So fulfill the way with care. And then you will have the same peace of a Buddha. You will be able to lie down in peace. All right, my friends, that is the talk for today. And we have a bit of time for reflections or questions or comments. Yes, Casey. Thank you.
I think this might sound a little too like thinking inside the box, but when like the thought of everything's connected, right? That we're all one and all connected. So what's the idea of being embodied?
Okay, so let's see if we parse this out. So all things are connected, yes, and we are also connected. This is right. We can see that in a very literal way. So the example that I like to use is if you are fortunate enough to live in a place where you can go outside and see the stars at night, right? You see the light of a star. That the reason that you see the light of the star is because the light has hit your eye. But that took billions of years, maybe, to get there, depending on where that star was, to get to your eye, right? So that thing might not even be there anymore. that star in that period of time that it took for the light to come here. But you, by seeing the star, are connected across that space and that time in this body, which is arguably limited, but not really, right? Because you have that little connection, and that seeing the star affects you. It affects your mind. There's a knowing of that, right? And there's a bodily effect that we can measure in the brain and such, right? The brain not being the same as the mind. Let's be clear about that. But so the interconnectedness is just the way that we're built, right? And yes, it means that, kind of like, in the children's song, the foot bone is connected to the ankle bone, and the ankle bone is connected to the leg bone, and the leg bone is connected to the knee bone, like that kind of connection. So that's why I usually don't say that we're one, because I think that tends to gloss over the fact of difference. And we need to acknowledge that there is difference within this. Right? If I eat lunch, it doesn't fill your stomach. Yeah. So that's happening, and the way to understand this, why this body is here, you could say, or the fact of this phenomena that is a changing phenomena also, is about karma. Right? It is about the way that the results of our intentions are playing out, and the results actually to some extent of our ignorance about how things work, because we cling, and therefore, according to sort of traditional Buddhist doctrine, what happens when you die is that this body and this mind are transformed, and there is another expression of the stuff that's still playing out, because we're still clinging to things. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense, and it starts to go there. But the body itself, there's a lot of different attitudes about the body in early Buddhism. There's disgust, there's, thinking about it as the body as a sort of difficulty for us. And there is also the body as a beautiful instrument of bliss, the body as a beautiful, instrument of being able to share the Dhamma. So a little bit on that. That's awesome. One more question. Yes, Julia.
I just wanted to comment on the interconnectedness. What helped me is, in the words of an astrophysicist and the Dalai Lama, as a matter of fact, I think we are made up of, I think he used the word atom. I don't remember what particle he referred to, but we're pretty much made up of what came out in the Big Bang. And I think we can be much more connected. I mean, that's science. It's not, it isn't, it verifies it for me.
Okay, good.
And another thing, I really appreciate your comments about being worthy. I think that's very valuable. From what I understand, we Westerners find that harder. But the comment that just the mere fact that we are of the earth, of this earth, makes us worthy. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Yeah. I feel, I mean, I feel like you can see that time and time and time again, not just in the Buddhist teachings, but all throughout Buddhist teachings over the centuries, that recognition that we are all worthy. All right, so I think we have come to the end of our time, and I actually am thinking about changing the time a little bit so that we might have a little bit more time for questions and for the meditation, actually. So I might change the schedule. This gets head nods whenever I talk about it. So, all right, well, I think in the summer, usually once a quarter or so, I revisit the schedule. So maybe in the summer we'll make a slight change to the Sunday Dhamma time. But in the meantime, Dana, I think, wants to make an announcement.
Yes. Good morning.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for a really lovely talk. The practice of giving and receiving has been part of Buddhism since its inception. Giving to Dassanaya supports our guiding teacher, the physical location at the vihara, and allows us to continue to offer Buddhist teachings in support of the awakening of all beings. Our support pages on the website under the support tab give you a variety of ways of giving when you feel like it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dana. Yes, so great gratitude to all the folks who are practicing together, who are offering all sorts of different supports. And may our practice be a condition in the world, a beneficial presence in the world, that we and all beings might come to know the truths of our lives, come to know the great compassion, the Dhamma, and ultimately come to know absolute peace by the power of the Buddhas, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, in each one's efforts. May all beings be liberated. Take care, friends.
Muchas gracias. Gracias, Claudia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And for folks who are